Mob is about to kick Suzuki's ass. Greetings, my friends. It's time for another psychic-filled adventure of Mob Psycho 100 Season 2. And this episode right here is building up to the epic finale of the series, where Mob is going to battle against the leader of Claw, Suzuki. But before that, he's going to battle against another adversary who has a super-powered umbrella. Yes, you heard me right. Before we begin, here's a spoiler warning for the episode. Make sure to go watch it and come back to this review. And another warning, this is going to be a super quick review. Just my quick thoughts on the episode because I am very low on time, but I had to talk about this episode because it was insane. It was awesome. It was a little more talky than the last episode of the series, which for the most part was just a big 20-minute action scene of watching dudes with psychic powers fight against each other. But I like that they decided to pump the brakes in this episode as we got to really see how Mob has truly grown in the series. It's something that this entire series has been all about, but now we get to see that not only is he utilizing his incredibly destructive power, but he's managing to not only control it, but using it to influence others. And that's because right before he battles Suzuki, he does battle with Serizawa, the Umbrella Man. And Serizawa is a pretty interesting character as he's been built up to be basically the strongest right-hand man of Suzuki, and he is really powerful, but of course against Mob, he's absolutely nothing. But what's interesting about his character is that they actually end up giving us his backstory, and remarkably, he's very similar to Mob in many senses. In fact, I'd say there's a strong amount of duality between both Mob and Serizawa in this episode, and another scene which we're going to actually talk about later. But we get to learn that in Serizawa's past that he was basically a shut-in, someone who gave up on life and simply was content to just stay in his dark room, living with his parents and playing video games. It wasn't until Suzuki came and found him that he actually found purpose in life. The thing is, it wasn't his purpose, it wasn't his goals, his aspirations. He was simply being used by someone else. And it made me realize that this could have exactly happened to Mob. In many ways, Mob and Serizawa are basically the same character, they're just characters that went down two very different paths, with Mob actually deciding to gain confidence and to do things for himself, to gain independence, whereas Serizawa went into a dark hole and ended up relying on everyone, simply being told that what he thought was doing was the right thing. These are two characters who are strikingly similar, and when Serizawa realized that, I realized it too. I was like, yeah, he's basically an adult version of Mob who never grew up or gained any confidence, and this actually ends up swaying Serizawa to the point where he decides not to battle against him, and even allows Mob to go and meet Suzuki, which is an epic confrontation to say the least. They're really building up Suzuki to be this amazingly end-all, be-all, super strong character, and I really cannot wait to see what his full battle against Mob is going to be like, because even with that, even with him destroying buildings and having the ability to distribute his power and take people's powers away, Mob is just an absolute wall for this character, both in terms of power and in psychology. In fact, my favorite scene of the episode wasn't even an action scene. It was this bit of dialogue that Mob actually gave to Suzuki when he told him that he still has the mindset of being a middle schooler, because Suzuki goes over this whole diatribe about his backstory of being in middle school and being the most powerful psychic in the world, and no one could match my power. And basically Mob's like, you're still basically that middle schooler, you haven't grown up. That cut him deep to the point where you could tell that it really started to piss him off, and this is truly when the battle began, but then suddenly Reagan just appears from out of nowhere. And you remember earlier when I was talking about duality? What I loved about Mob and Serizawa being similar is we also have Reagan and Suzuki being similar. They're basically con artists. They're brothers in arms in terms of what they do. They just do it in a completely different way, with Suzuki being this Super Saiyan-powered psychic, and of course Reagan being a bullshit artist. And even Reagan tries to do this in this episode by trying to shoot him with a gun or even trying to just punch him, but of course none of that works, and right as he's about to be blown away, Serizawa jumps in, ends up saving him, and that's when Suzuki just starts blowing shit up all around the place, shooting lasers all over the place, and that's when Mob finally goes on the attack, grabbing him, slamming him through a building as they prepare to do battle in a giant, psychic, suspended skyscraper. It's gonna be awesome, guys. I cannot wait for this finale. What's the rundown on this episode of Mob Psycho 100? If you're not watching this series, I don't know what's wrong with you. This is a series which is going to go down as an absolute classic. Not just for its characters, not just for its animation, not just for its action, but for the story that is being told. This is one of the best coming-of-age stories that I have ever seen, and what I love about it is that you can go back and watch the first season, and you can really see how Mob has changed so much as a character to where he is now. It's amazing that the creator of the series, who I think hilariously goes by the name of One, he's the creator of One Punch Man as well, a lot of his stories are really silly and outlandish and downright cartoony, but juxtaposed to that is always a story about a person who has to prove themselves in a world where things are not always equal and the world is always trying to cut you down. You always have to keep getting back up, and you always have to try and influence people, and you're not always going to be able to do it alone. That's one of the biggest themes of this entire episode. Suzuki sees himself as this singular epic being that no one could possibly touch. He needs no one, and he only uses people for his own goals. Mob, on the other hand, while he has this incredibly godlike destructive power, simply can't control it, and he has a personality that makes him a little awkward at times. It's through interacting with other people and growing and learning from them that he's actually become a stronger person. He has to rely on people. Everyone has deficiencies and everyone has problems, but that's why we rely on one another, to make ourselves stronger. And of course, it's kind of a cheesy theme, it's the power of friendship, but the way that it's handled here doesn't feel preachy, and it just plain works. Awesome episode of Mob Psycho 100. I'm giving the episode a 5 out of 5. You have got to check out this series. If any of you are watching the series, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below, and what you hope to see in the big epic finale, Mob versus Suzuki. Let's get it! Alright guys, that's my review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby.